James McGregor is a journalist turned businessman who's been in China for close on 20 years. His fascination for Asia started when he was 18, serving as an infantry soldier in Vietnam. He began learning Mandarin and went on to become Taiwan and later China bureau chief for the prestigious US newspaper, The Wall Street Journal, building a formidable range of contacts on the way. McGregor's been chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in China and now runs his own business consultancy, investing in Chinese firms as well as advising others on how to get it right in China.
James, the fascination with Asia, for some people having been in the Vietnam War would have put them off Asia for life, but not you. How come?
Well, look, I grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, up near the Canadian border in a small town, and I ended up a soldier in Vietnam. And I looked around and I thought, America has people dying here. This must be an important part of the world. I was very ignorant. So when I got out of Vietnam, I just started reading and reading and reading about Vietnam and about the rest of Asia. The more I read, the more I could see that China was rising. So I thought, well, I'm going to go over and take a look at China. So I came here in '85 and backpacked across the country and decided it would be the most important country in my lifetime.
Well, it's an amazing choice, though, still to make, because you had a successful career as a journalist, in the corridors of power in Washington. That choice to sort of uproot and say, okay, I'm now going to move off to China. Not everybody saw China as being this, great economic power, not in the 80s at least.
A good journalist is always looking to learn the next thing, and I was time to
write about doing business in China. But even with all your cultural and business insights, have you ever been burned?
Have I ever been burned? I don't think I've ever been really burned on a big investment, but I've been burned in a lot of small ways. I've hired people who turned out to be not what they appeared to be. I've trusted people to do business with who turned out to be untrustworthy.
So any of these, wrong highs and so on, that's not really because it's China, but it could have happened anywhere.
I'm from Minnesota. It's a very straightforward place. You say what you think and you treat people well. You got to be careful here. You got to be much more clever of China.
So how do you handle that if everything is, so to say, inscrutable in that sense? You can't tell whether you have a deal or you haven't got a deal.
I'll do due diligence and make sure the people that I'm working with I can trust. And then it's like Reagan used to say about the Russians, trust but verify. Having said that, look, if you're doing business in the United States, it isn't that different. The difference is in the US or in Europe, it's very systemized and run by accountants and lawyers and rules and regulations. Here, those are in place, but they're less important than actually just the people-to-people relations and how you're going to work that out.
That really didn't help me.
I've been very gratified, and I've spoken all over the world. I've been with Greenspan, I've been with the Queen of Jordan, Kissinger, and people have read my book. What's most gratifying is the people who know China the best come up to me and say, everything you said in there I agree with. And even more so, Chinese people in the audiences come up and say, you taught me something that I didn't know about my own country. And I'm pretty critical.
Your book is actually called not just 1 Billion Customers, but Lessons from the Front Lines of Doing Business in China. Front lines, to me, suggests that it's some kind of conflict. You see doing business in China as being, this really tough fight?
Well, there's a parable, 不打不相识, which is, unless you've had a good fight, you can't be friends. So you do business here, you make a lot of friends.
So there is a certain amount of this sort of, having to really get in there.
Well, it's a very competitive business environment for one, and then you've got the conflicts between cultures, and even people end up fighting their headquarters here because they want you to do things like everywhere else in the world, and you're trying. So you fight China by day and you fight your headquarters by night. So it's a 24/7 job here.
Well, what about a sequel? Any
sequel to my
this
book?
Coming? Exactly. Spider-Man has Spider-Man 3, so, you could at least do a sequel.
Well, maybe 10 years. I wrote this book to last 20 years because I talk about people's behavior. Chinese people have been like this for about 2,000 years, so I think I'm safe on shelf life.
So you think that the conditions that you actually describe in your book are going to persist for a good while?
Yeah, because I really talk about cultural underpinnings and political, how the politics have shaped the way people act and think, and yeah, it's going to be that way a long time. And people here are going to get richer, they're going to get more worldly, but they're still, China's it's governed by a culture as much as a government.
So what about a favorite bit of advice in the existing book?
Well, really, because there's so much fiddling with books and tendencies toward corruption here, I really believe your CFO is key. If you don't trust your CFO like your mother, hire your mother.
Shall we walk on?
Sure.
You talk about, Guanxi in your book, and you actually say that this is overrated, which was a bit of a surprise to me. Why is it overrated?
Well, look, relationships matter, but Guanxi, the true meaning of Guanxi is sincerity, people that will really look out for each other and have a strong relationship. The problem is you get these people who say Guanxi is like Guanxi merchants. I've got connections, I can cut corners for you. That's a bunch of nonsense. That's people just trying to make a buck. Pretending that there's an inside track. Maybe in the early days of China, China business, you could get something done with an inside track deal.
And key guy.
Absolutely, you got to do your relationships from the top, the bottom, the middle, all at the same time. Because even if you've got to deal with somebody at the top, the people at the bottom can make your life miserable and keep it from getting done. I guess that's not so different than other countries, but here it's even more so because the system is less dependable than relationships.
So whether you have a small business like, selling beaded bags, to if you're doing a multi-million-dollar joint venture, these still apply, the rules still apply.
Yeah, I would imagine like her being here selling this, I would imagine the local commerce bureau, bureaucrats, the local cops will come by and say you're not allowed to do that, so she'll have to take them out for dumplings or probably give them a little bit of money. It always happens. There's always, every piece of ground in China has somebody who thinks they manage it and wants to get their little piece of the action.
Do you think this is ever going to change?
No.
Oh, that was a quick answer.
Oh, you got to look. China's been like this for a long time.
But some people would say, well, if you don't bribe, you just won't get that contract. You won't get that deal.
Well, if you're going to sell your soul in China and get involved in bribery, say your prayers when you get old and do a lot of charity work, because maybe you can make it to heaven. But it's hell if you get involved in that here.
Thousands of foreigners have now got their foot in the door here